Hotep, everybody. This is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network and host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, and historian, and national political commentator. It is Tuesday, June 18th, 2024. And I want to talk about this story. I posted on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, and it deals with recent comments from veteran actor Morgan Freeman. Okay. And it reiterates some comments that Morgan Freeman has made before about Black History Month. Some comments I would say are uninformed comments. This is an article from independent.co.uk. Morgan Freeman says he detests Black History Month, quote unquote, it's not right. He says, my history is American history, and he's promoting a new I think it's a documentary or movie he has out. But he did an interview with Variety magazine. And in this interview with Variety, in the new interview with Variety, Morgan Freeman elaborated on those feelings. He said, I detest it. He said of Black History Month, he said, quote, the mere idea of it, you are going to give me the shortest month in a year. Are you going to celebrate my history? This whole idea makes my teeth itch. It's not right, end quote. He added, my history is American history. It's the one thing in this world I am interested in, beyond making money, having a good time, and getting enough sleep, end quote. Okay. He's currently promoting The Gray House, a Civil War era historical drama he produced along with Kevin Costner. All right. So, yes, he's interested in history, and he did a series on the History Channel as well, dealing with African Americans in history. But he's grossly wrong about Black History Month, African American History Month, which was created in 1926 by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, okay, who co-founded the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, September 9th, 1915. So these comments here are similar to comments Morgan Freeman made in 2006 in the interview with Mike Wallace for 60 Minutes. If we just look at this briefly, and then what I'm going to do is on March 31st, 2024, I interviewed one of my friends and fellow historians, Professor Manu Ampim. Okay. And Professor Manu Ampim, we talked about a number of different topics, and the main topic was dealing with the history of African civilizations. But we also talked about Dr. Carter G. Woodson, in the father of Black history, and we talked about African American History Month, Black History Month, and Dr. Woodson's work dealing with African history also. Okay, so I'm going to play that interview next for you, an excerpt of that interview what we did with Dr. Carter G. Woodson. But there's a total misunderstanding of this history. First of all, Black History Month was never designed to be the only time of the year we celebrate our history. Okay. And Dr. Carter G. Woodson, when we look here at this presentation that I do for Black History Month, Woodson founded Negro History Week in 1926. He explained the reason behind the celebration in a pamphlet widely distributed months before the first celebration was to take place during the second week in February 1926. The reason why the month of February was chosen, okay, and we created Negro History Week, African American History Month. We created this. White people did not give us this, okay? The reason why the month of February was chosen is not because it's the shortest month of the year. It's not because it's the coldest month of the year. It's because the second week in February contains the birth dates of Frederick Douglass, which is February 14th. That's the assumed birth date for Frederick Douglass, because he was a former slave and he didn't know the exact date of his birth or the exact year of his birth. It was either 1817 or 1818, he thought. And also February 12th is the birth date of Abraham Lincoln. Okay, so after Frederick Douglass dies in 1895, we're going to have celebrations in the African American community celebrating Frederick Douglass' birthday. And after Lincoln is assassinated, April 1865, we're going to have celebrations celebrating Abraham Lincoln's birthday as well. Okay, because of the Civil War is going to lead to the African slaves being freed. The Civil War was not fought to free the slaves; it was fought to bring the South back into the Union. But it's going to lead to the slaves being freed. So, because you already had these celebrations taking place in the African American community during the second week of February, Dr. Carter G. Woodson inserted his new monthly cultural or weekly, his new cultural celebration during that same period of time. It had nothing to do with it being the shortest month of the year. Okay. And if you just need to have 30 days to celebrate Black History Month, so you feel like a full human being or something like this, you can still celebrate March 1st and March 2nd. Okay, it's not against the law to continue to celebrate March 1st and March 2nd if you just have to have 30 days. But Dr. Woodson exclaimed that Blacks knew practically nothing about their history. Okay, African Americans knew practically nothing about their history. He ultimately believed that African Americans could benefit immensely from knowledge of their past and accomplishments of their ancestors. He added that race prejudice was the byproduct of whites' belief that Black people had not contributed anything of worth to world civilization. All right. And Dr. Woodson wrote a number of books. Miseducation of the Negro in 1933 was his most popular book, but he also wrote African Background Outlined as well. He wrote books dealing with the history of Africa also. Dr. Woodson argued that if the historical record was set straight, that if the history of Black people were studied along with the achievements of others in schools, not only would Black youth develop a sense of pride and self-worth, but racism would also be abolished. Dr. Woodson, so contrary to popular belief, Black History Month was never designed to be the only time of the year we study our history or celebrate our history. Okay. Dr. Woodson said that the history of African Americans had to be taught year round. Negro History Week was the first major achievement in popularizing Black history and was unique in that it focused on Black youth. Okay. It wasn't only for African American youth, but it focused on Black youth. Woodson realized that the miseducation of Black people began in their homes, communities, and elementary schools. Dr. Woodson's vision of Negro History Week was optimistic, strategic, and long-term. Optimistic, strategic, and long-term. He wanted the modest week-long celebration to serve as a stepping stone toward the gradual introduction of Black history into the curricula of all levels of the U.S. educational system. Okay. And he said that teachers needed to diligently prepare for the celebration months in advance as well. And he said Negro History Week should be a demonstration of what has been done in the study of the Negro during the year, and at the same time as a demonstration of greater things to be accomplished. He said this was in his instruction to school teachers. Okay. He said that a subject which receives attention 1 week out of the 36 will not mean much to anyone. Read Dr. Peril Dagbovi's fantastic book on Dr. Carter G. Woodson called Carter G. Woodson in Washington, D.C., the father of Black history. Okay, so there's a lot of just gross, total misunderstanding of African American History Month. And in the segment from the interview I did with historian Professor Manu Ampim, professor at Contra Costa College, Professor Manu Ampim talks about moving to African Heritage Month as well. And he talks about how a lot of African Americans are afraid of embracing African culture, African history. And he also has criticisms for ASALH today, Association for the Study of African American Life and History, which is the organization that Dr. Carter G. Woodson co-founded September 9th, 1915. Visit my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for this new 10-week online course. So we're going to teach this on Sundays, normally 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're running late today. So as soon as I finish this broadcast, I was going to start the class about 5:30 p.m. today. Because it's a holiday weekend, I'm going to do a quick introduction to the class, so you could join us for that. The class is on sale, $80. You get 5 of my lectures free in digital download format, okay, when you register for this as well. Click right here, register here. You can do debit card, credit card, what have you. If you want to do it through Cash App, send it through, our Cash App is here, $ the AHN show through Cash App. You click on the link. It takes you here. And if you send it through Cash App, follow it up with an email. You can email me through the website right here, contact the African History Network at the top. If you send it through Cash App, follow up with an email, let me know you sent the registration through Cash App. And this is our official Cash App account, $ the AHN show, SHOW. When you go to it, it'll say Michael. These are some fake African History Network Cash App accounts that have been stealing money from us. I'm still trying to get them shut down. Here's our PayPal link right here. Also, okay. So this is African empires, the Moors, and the transatlantic slave trade, 5,000 BC to 1800 AD. Okay, so this is a new 10-week online course that I'm teaching. I've been teaching online history classes going back to 2017, and I put these classes together, put together the curriculum. There are about 200 slides in this class, 80 to 100 articles that we reference, 15 books. You don't have to buy any of the books. I'll show you screenshots of the book as well. The content is PG-13. You can use this with your children, okay? And it's very engaging. It is interactive also. There's a class chat, so you can ask me questions in the class also. You can see me, I can't see you, so you don't have to worry about that. Here's the interview, an excerpt of the interview I did March 31st, 2024 with historian Professor Manu Ampim. So when you talk about Dr. Carter G. Woodson in your book as well. And you in the broadcast that you did December 15th, 2023, you talked about how Dr. Carter G. Woodson is left out of the conversation dealing with African history, African culture, things of this nature. But his last 2 books dealt with African history. He had African history background, and then he was working on another one. But he also had a book on African folklore, African myths and folklore as well. Talk about Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who most of us know, co-founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, September 9th, 1915. Created Negro History Week, second week in February 1926. Talk about his research in Africa, dealing with African history and culture.
Yeah, that's one of the most important developments in the 20th century regarding African civilizations. Carter G. Woodson is very much omitted without justification from the focus and discussion on bringing African civilizations to the forefront. One of the things that Woodson did, I mean, he created his organization, the Association for the Study. At that time, it's called Negro Life and History. Now it's Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And Woodson began to do his work in the early 20th century. And when Woodson was around up until when he passed in 1950, his focus was increasingly on African civilizations. But from the time that Woodson led the charge to make the focus on history of Black people front and center, when he created the week in the second week of February 1926, Africa had always been a central component for Woodson. So and he's left out. So a couple of things that folks should know. He wrote several books on Africa. You mentioned
Right.
African myths and folktales. That was one. The last two books he wrote was African Heroes and Heroines, and the last book is the African Background Outline. That was
Right.
the last two books. Not only that, but the last three articles written by the great scholar who passed in 1950. The
Right.
last three articles written by Woodson was a article series simply called Egypt, a 3-part series, and it was called Egypt because for Woodson the mission was to bring back the missing pages, the missing chapters, and the missing volumes of the Black contribution to U.S. and world history. So for Woodson, this was unacceptable that Black people had been written out of the story of U.S. and world history and contributions. So for him, it was to establish our humanity. So when Woodson is focusing on in his essays and his books and his presentations to his organization, when he's arguing that there has to be the missing pages put back into the story, he's not just talking about the experience here in the U.S. He's looking at a global experience. When he says world history, he means just that. But so when Woodson was around, not only is he writing about African civilizations in his articles, his essays, and his books, but even the theme of the organization. You look at the organizational themes, and you see a number of themes during the lifetime of Woodson dealing specifically with Africa. Since that
Right.
time, the organization's moved away from Woodson's position on Africa. And the problem is that people don't even know. If they look at the journal the journal, now it's a Journal of African American Life and History, but the Journal of Negro History,
Negro history.
when that was founded in 1916, the very first issue is dealing with Africa. And not only that, but he has a team of writers who are focusing on Africa. So they from the very first issue of the journal, volume 1, number 1, there's several articles dealing with Africa, and they constantly did book reviews, and they're on Africa, not only from the first issue of the volume of the journal all the way through. But not only that, but even the bulletin. Later on, they created the bulletin of then it was called Bulletin of Negro History. Now it's a Bulletin of the Black History Bulletin. But in 1937, the very first issue, Woodson, as the editor, he has a big old picture of Africa on page 6, a big old picture on the very first issue. And in fact, all the way through, there is focus on Africa, and this gets left out of the scholarly discussion. And when scholars are looking at the Black history movement, they leave out Woodson and his unique focus on African civilizations. Like, for example, let me just give one example of what gets left out. So in March of 1939, the so-called Negro History Bulletin, which was designed and focused on for teachers, so that teachers can teach the students, this is what Woodson wrote. He says, sculpture reached its first, sorry, let me go to the title. The title is The Negro in Art, From Africa to America. And this is the March 1939 issue, volume 2, number 6. And this is what Woodson writes. He says, sculpture reached its first high level in ancient times under the Egyptians. The Sphinx near the pyramids of Giza, the temple at Luxor, the rock temple at Abu Simbel, and the obelisk show the greatness of Egyptian architecture and sculpture. And so he's claiming Egypt or Kemet as an African civilization, but he's writing articles all the way through. He's reviewing books like Lorenzo Turner on Africanisms in the Gullah dialect, and Woodson's reviewing the books like that because Africa was front and center for Woodson. There's not a time that Woodson was not writing articles and or books about Africa, or his organization having themes dealing specifically with Africa. What Osla has done, and you mentioned Daryl Scott, he's one of the last persons defending Woodson when Woodson said that self-publishing is self-defense. And so what the organization has done, they've left out Woodson's work on Africa not because it's not there, because they're uncomfortable. So Professor Scott, Dr. Scott, he was arguing that how in the world could you disregard the work of Woodson when he established in 1922 Associated Publishers? He said that
Associated Publishers Inc. Yep, the publishing company.
1922. Yep. And so the thing is that Woodson said that nobody can edit and change your work if you're publishing yourself. So that's why for him, he can say whatever he wanted to say. Like you had the great book there, The Miseducation. He was able to say what he wanted to say, when he wanted to say it, and who he wanted to say it to. But what the organization did is decide to disrespect the tradition, disrespect Woodson. And now if you want to get the journal, you got to go through the University of Chicago. And Dr. Scott was one of the last battlers to say, this doesn't make sense. This is not Woodson. This is not Woodson's tradition. But guess what? Those folks are the one, and they may be listening. So what? Challenge the evidence. They're the ones uncomfortable with Africa. That's why they.
I get that impression. I get that impression that many of them are uncomfortable with Africa.
They're uncomfortable with Africa, and that's why they would rather give up independence against Woodson's position and give the publication to the University of Chicago. So, folks, if you want to get the journal of what's now called a Journal of African American History, or get the back issues of the Journal of Negro History, you got to go through the big mainstream institution, University of Chicago Press, and not through the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, because those professionals who have the money and resources to remain independent, but they don't have the orientation. So they disrespect Woodson and they disrespect his tradition. There's no defense to it. So kudos to the guest you had on, because Brother
Dr. Scott.
Daryl Scott, he's one of the last ones fighting to try to keep a respectful focus on Woodson's vision. So not only has the organization give up the independent publishing apparatus, but they've abandoned Africa. And you look at the theme now, everything is African American. There's nothing wrong with that. But look, Brother Michael, here's how we do it in the Woodson tradition.
And I have some of the themes. Go ahead, keep talking, because we got some of the themes. Because there's been a theme, there's been an annual theme for Black History Month, Negro History Week, African American History Month since 1928. Okay, and Dr. Woodson picked these themes. He died in 1950. Go ahead and then we're gonna go over a few of these themes that dealt with Africa, because most African Americans don't know there's been an annual theme for Black History Month. When I do my presentations on African American History Month, I said we don't have to keep recycling the same 15 to 20 sanitized Negroes every year. We don't understand how powerful this monthly cultural celebration is and why it was actually created. Go ahead.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, to that list, we'll also put 1972 on that list: African art, music, literature, and a valuable cultural experience. But look, I'm glad you have that there, because this is new information that gets omitted. So if we look at the focus of the annual themes, Africa's front and center, because when Woodson said that the goal was to put back in the missing pages of world history, what the hell do you think they was talking about? World history is talking about Africa. So that's why you have African themes. And the last African theme was really 1992, because and it was because of the great work of Van Sertima and others who challenged and exposed Columbus. And that's about it since that time. But everything's been just okay. Now here's what we do in the tradition of Woodson. Two important things I want people to know. Number one, in the current theme by Asala, and they set the national theme for those that follow them. This year is African Americans and labor. So we changed it. It's we have ours was the classical African contributions in art from Africa to the Americas. Because for us, there's no way to separate the Black experience in the Americas from the African background and origin. And so whenever they have a theme only focusing on African American, we add the African component to it every single time. But so they have African Americans in the arts. That's okay, but it's not in the Woodsonian tradition. The Woodsonian tradition would be the achievements in art in Africa and the Americas. That's why I read this this article he wrote, "The Negro in Art from Africa to America." That's in the Woodsonian tradition, and but the people are not comfortable with Africa. And like the great Kwame Ture said, if you start your history in slavery, the best you can be is a good slave. And that's what we're dealing with now. We have people that have disrespected Woodson, and they have only focused on African American because that's what they're comfortable with. So that's one issue to be aware of. The other issue is that it should be properly called. If we're following Woodson's direction and his leadership and his insight, it should be called African Heritage Month, because that's what we're focusing on, African heritage. When people say Black History Month, to them, it means to focus on issues of struggle, of how Black people overcome slavery, escape slavery, or how they got their ass kicked by the police or something like that. And what Woodson was concerned about after the celebration was founded in 1926, if we see Woodson in the 1930s, he's criticizing at that time what was being done, always talking about something negative in Black people. He said, look, we have to assert our humanity. We have to look at Black contributions, achievements, and contributions in the world, and not always associate Black people with a problem. This is why Woodson focused on it as a celebration. And he's embracing Africa. They had plays, they had all kind of skits, plays, all kind of things, important information about contributions, because Woodson understood that we had to assert our humanity and use at least some time of the year to focus on our unique achievements, accomplishments, and contributions in the world. And this is why he continues to embrace Africa. So as he's learning more, he's writing more about it. But what's happened is that people are more and more, they're uncomfortable with Africa. They leave out Woodson's focus on Africa. So when they say Black History Month, it means really, as some of us would say, it's a Negro version where you're only dealing with safe folks who are only, you can only talk about them if they're fighting against slavery or during the civil rights or human rights era, which are great struggles, but it's very limited in scope. And so African Heritage Month means that we have to embrace Africa as we look at the overall Black contributions. This is why at our college, we've always had themes that associate the celebration. That's what we have with Africa and our experience in the Americas. And we tell folks that we do not endorse all of the negativity you all want to bring in February, because this is a chance for us to assert our humanity. So it should be African Heritage Month as a reminder that Africa must be the foundation for our perspective. But those that are dealing with Black History Month, most of that is negative. Like, for example, I saw a flyer, somebody shared something with me that somebody had a Black History Month event, and all I saw was a fashion show and some drinking. So what the hell is this? This is a Black History Month event. You know what I mean? Because it ain't got nothing to do with Africa, and it's got nothing to do with contributions to humanity. So, Brother Michael, what's important is that we reteach and re-educate it, even the informed community, the so-called, whatever they call it, the conscious community, to shift, because this is the only way in which we can take back the focus created by Woodson and separate it from all this craziness and make sure that we define it as African Heritage Month and force people to have positive events that embrace our unique contributions to humanity, which I lay out in my book. I have a whole section on these contributions in math, medicine, architecture, social organization, medicine, you name it. And these contributions must be front and center. And this is what the concern was of Woodson, as he was criticizing those folks that only focused on problems and not the contributions of Black people.
Excellent, excellent. And the name of Professor Manu Ampim's book again is A History of African Civilizations. This is the second revised edition, A History of African Civilizations. You can get it at his website, advancingtheresearch.org, advancingtheresearch.org. We have it up here on the screen. We're going to put the link again here in the thread of the broadcast. Please support this brother. Order his book today. This is great reading material, great material to use with your children. I'm going to pull this back up, this slide I have, because this is a slide from my African American History Month presentations. And this is research I did years ago. If we just look at some of the themes, now there's been an annual theme since 1928. And if you go to Asalah's website, asalah.org, asalh.org, they have all the themes going back to 1928, annual themes. 1928, civilization, a world achievement. 1933, Ethiopia meets era in truth. 1935, the Negro achievements in Africa. 1936, African background outlined. Now, we know Dr. Woodson died in 1950, but 1960, the annual theme was strengthening America through education in Negro history and African culture. I don't understand how you deal with Negro history and African culture, but okay. This is 1960. But in 1971, African civilization and culture, a worthy historical background. And then we know let me see, I have Asalah's website up here right now. We know in, let's see, 1992, you talked about African roots, experience new worlds, pre-Columbus to space exploration. So that was the 500-year commemoration of Columbus setting sail on his first voyage. 1987, Afro-Americans and the Constitution from colonial times to the present, etc. Go ahead and talk about that for a minute. Then I have the article that I was looking for from the New York Times that talks about Brazil and South America.
Yeah, these themes, it clearly shows Woodson's consistent and well-rounded focus on Africa. And as you mentioned, he passed in 1950. So when the themes continued in 1960, 1971, 1972, it's because these are people that was still around, that he was mentoring and influenced. But as time has gone on, they've separated. I'm talking about the organization from Woodson's focus on Africa, and the community and the public has fallen into this, unfortunately, of separating Woodson from Africa and separating his scholarship from Africa, because Woodson more and more was focusing on Egypt, Ethiopia. I mean, I can read so many different articles and statements that he made about Ethiopia as the forerunner of Kemet. He says that Ethiopia, which came first, it was the forerunner. And his book,
Ethiopia and Kush, Abyssinia, the grandmother. Yes. Mm-hmm.
He's talking about that, and he's mentioning in his book, the African, the Negro in our history. This is when in 1922, this is when he starts to focus on this. And the Negro in our history, this was the definitive textbook for decades until John Hope Franklin wrote his book. But before John Hope Franklin's book, From Slavery to Freedom, Woodson's book, the Negro in our history, was the standard text. And so every aspect of his work, including the organization, you see it through the themes. You see Woodson's influence on Africa. But Brother Michael, we would never know that today if you read and listen to these scholars today. It ain't that the evidence is hard to find. Like you say, anybody can go to Oslo's website and see the themes and see the other publications. It's not difficult, but of course, now you got to go to the University of Chicago. You can get some of these early volumes and get the articles on. So this is why it was important for me in the second revised edition. This is why it was important for me to expand the second edition and include a chapter on Woodson, to blow up the myths and misinformation that is across the board. I mean, people who've read a lot, they know about the miseducation of the Negro, but there's a lot of other crucial and critical things that are not known about Woodson because we haven't read deeply enough, and scholars have carefully omitted Woodson's work on Africa. And that's why it's very important for me to get this information out. And when I've been doing presentations, people have been very surprised. Like for example, to show you Woodson's work, as he's the editor of the journal, so Journal of Negro History, Volume 1, Number 1, January 1916. Look, they have the first issue. This is what was impressive about Woodson. He wasn't writing alone. He had a team of writers that was making this contribution. So Monroe wrote a piece called The Passing Tradition and the African Civilization. This is the very first issue. And then there's Stafford, who wrote a book, The Mind of the African Negro, Africans, as reflected in this Proverbs. Then there is, and then there's a book review, another book review, Negro Culture in West Africa. So you got this in the very first volume. Woodson pulls together a pool of writers to help support his writing and scholarship in the area. So it's a body of writers focusing on Africa in the very early period, over 100 years ago, and we would never know that until we pull up those themes, which are public. You don't even have to register and become a member to see that. And then, and you got the journal, and there's the bulletin, plus there's Woodson's work. So this is why I added the chapter to the book in order to blow up this nonsense about the misrepresentation. You talk about the miseducation of the Negro. This is miseducation all over again by his own organization, miseducating people about their own founder. And I'll challenge anybody, because documentation beats conversation is right there.
Absolutely.
And this is a key. And you know what? This is the second time in my research that I found this. The first was when I was shocked to see that the biggest file that Dr. King kept was this file on Africa and the African liberation movements. So here you got two 20th century giants, and people around them have totally misrepresented the record because they're not comfortable. And not because these men didn't focus on Africa, it's because the propagandists have decided to omit this information. That's why it's so crucial, brother, to challenge people and make sure that we begin to call it and conceive of it and execute February as African Heritage Month, to break away from the craziness around Black History Month, where you got nothing but superficial events that have nothing to do with Woodson, and we should not want any part of that. And just to give people an example, if they don't know what I'm talking about, they had an event at UC Berkeley out here a few years ago. It was some black guy. He had apparently success at getting some white nationalists out of the KKK. So that became a Black History Month event to show his success in getting some white supremacists out of the KKK. And they put that on our website at the college. Somebody told me about it. I said, you know what? You got a few minutes to take that nonsense down. So we don't support that. How in the hell does this become a part of our sacred celebration? You know, it's about achievements, accomplishments and contributions in the world, and to assert our humanity and not deal with all of the negativity that we hear and know about and learn about all the time. We cannot always associate Black people with a problem, but that's why I'm focusing on it and really telling the community we got to break away and move forward in February in the Woodsonian tradition and embrace Africa.
Exactly. And just so people know, Dr. Woodson chose the second week in February, not because February is the shortest month of the year, but because it contains the birth dates of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, the assumed birth date of Douglass. Douglass didn't know his exact birth date, so he took the birth date of February 14th. Most of us know that as Valentine's Day. And then Abraham Lincoln's birthday, February 12th, because going back to when Frederick Douglass dies in 1895, basically each birthday after that, we had celebrations in our community for Frederick Douglass. And then also there were celebrations that we had in our community for Abraham Lincoln's birthday as well, after, Lincoln's assassinated in 1865. So because those two you already had those celebrations taking place in the African-American community, Dr. Woodson inserted this new cultural holiday, this new cultural celebration into that period. Okay, so that's why it's in February. It has nothing to do with February being the coldest month of the year, the shortest month of the year. And it's not something white people gave us either. Right. I hear this myth also. White people gave us the month of February. No, we took it. Okay, we created that. Visit my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for this new 10-week online course. So we're going to teach this on Sundays, normally 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're running late today. So as soon as I finish this broadcast, I was going to start the class about 5:30 p.m. today. Because it's a holiday weekend, I'm going to do a quick introduction to the class. So you could join us for that. Class is on sale, $80. You get 5 of my lectures free in digital download format. Okay, when you register for this as well. Click right here, register here. You can do debit card, credit card, what have you. If you want to do it through Cash App, send it through Our Cash App is here, $ the AHN show through Cash App. You click on the link. It takes you here. And if you send it through Cash App, follow it up with an email. You can email me through the website right here. Contact the African History Network at the top. If you send it through Cash App, follow up with an email. Let me know you sent the registration through Cash App. And this is our official Cash App account, $ the AHN show, SHOW. When you go to it, it'll say Michael. These are some fake African History Network Cash App accounts that have been stealing money from us. So still trying to get them shut down. Here's our PayPal link right here. Also, okay. So this is African empires, the Moors, and the transatlantic slave trade, 5000 BC to 1800 AD. Okay, so this is a new 10-week online course that I'm teaching. I've been teaching online history classes going back to 2017, and I put these classes together, put together the curriculum. There are about 200 slides in this class, 80 to 100 articles that we reference, 15 books. You don't have to buy any of the books. I'll show you screenshots of the book as well. The content is PG-13. You can use this with your children, okay? And it's very engaging. It is interactive also. There's a class chat, so you can ask me questions in the class.